Hi everyone, welcome back to Eve's Book Nook. I'm Eve and I'm actually shooting two videos today, so you'll see this outfit back to back. But I'm going to talk now about my current reads and just some book updates and life updates just to keep you on track. Since this is a new channel, I don't want you to feel like I'm leaving you hanging. So first things first, just kind of a what I've finished update. At long last, the behemoth that is Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb is now checked off on my read list. I have been reading this book on and off, like picking it up, putting it down, picking it up, putting it down for over a year, probably a year and a half now. It's about 840 pages. This is the third book. I've mentioned this on numerous occasions already on this channel, but this is the third book in the first trilogy of 5 or 6 trilogies by Robin Hobb in the same world, the realm of the Elderlings. So this is, like I said, the third book, first trilogy called the Farseer trilogy. So it starts with Assassin's Apprentice, then goes to Royal Assassin, and then this one is Assassin's Quest, wrapping up the trio. On Goodreads, I gave this a 4 stars. It's a 4.5 for me. I loved it, but the cadence of this, the tempo was just so back and forth, back and forth. It sped up and then it just died down so dramatically that I felt a little discombobulated sometimes when I was reading it. And then in the last chapter, when the climactic components of the climactic moments of the book have already happened, but she still needed to tie up loose ends, and it bothered me the way that she did it, pacing wise. I think the decisions were fine. You know, the choices that she made with the plot endings, but not with the pace at which she explained those endings, if that makes sense. So it was not perfect for me. I think it was probably the weakest of the trilogy, but it was still great. I still loved it. Verity and the Fool are my favorite characters. Although Fitz, the narrator, I think he bothers a lot of people. He bothered me most in the second book because it was very teenage angsty. This book, there's a lot less of that. He's more of an adult. It shows in his way of thinking. It's just less like pubescent anger. Anyways, I loved it, but it was imperfect. But I'm so glad to have finally checked that off my list. I am currently 4 months postpartum, and I had set out this year to finish Stalingrad, which I don't think it's visible. Oh, maybe it is. Stalingrad by Vasily Grossman, the green book right here, which was just, again, like an absolute mammoth. I think it was just crested 1,000 pages before I gave birth in June. And then I wanted to finish Shadow of the Wind and Assassin's Quest before my maternity leave ended, which was a 4-month maternity leave, or 16 weeks, but close enough. And I finished Shadow of the Wind. This was a book that I had started on my honeymoon 2 years ago. And I did not finish Assassin's Quest before I went back to work. So that's why it's been a little bit slow for me. This is literally the only book that I finished so far this month, I think. Or maybe even in September too. I think September and October, this is the only book that I've read. So I was like, I just have to get this off my plate. I'm back at work now. Things are a little bit slower reading wise as I'm like figuring out my schedule, his rhythm, my husband's rhythm. But it's relieving to have the 3 books that I set out to read this year done. And for the record, I do try to read in a non-maternity year. I try to read 52 books. So averaging out to a book a week. This year, I think I've only read in the high 30s, and most of that was pre-baby. So I really like pushed myself to read a lot while I was still pregnant, and then it has slowly, actually no, rather exponentially decreased since June. But that's okay. I was expecting that, so I'm not gonna beat myself up about it if I don't meet my Goodreads goal. Anyways. The other 2 books, the kind of currently reading books, I've already mentioned one on the channel, Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This is a fiction novel that follows 2 ex-con fathers. One black, one white, both have sons, and these sons were a married gay couple. And these formerly incarcerated men have lived hardened lives, and I think based on what I've read so far, they're both homophobes. But their sons, and this is no spoiler at all, it's literally the first page, or the first chapter, you find out that their sons were killed, and I haven't gotten this far yet, but they seem to team up to figure out why. It's not really a whodunit, it's not a mystery, it's more of a thriller not like a psychological thriller like what you see a lot today, but a thriller in like action-packed, quick-moving novel. But it's, there's also sort of a poignant conversation about the reconciliation of father and son, and conversations about sexuality, conversations about death and grief, reckoning with forgiveness, and also guilt about your relationship with your child as a result of your stance on their sexuality. And I think that they're grieving what could have been. They after their sons have died, are defending them for the first time. So it's going to be a really interesting book. I am not usually like a literary fiction type, and I don't know if this really falls into that category, but the themes of it are kind of reminding me of something that like Jodi Picoult would write about, and she's also not an author that I've picked up often, but that's sort of like the sort of controversial, the conversations about incarceration, homophobia, revenge, things that are to many, I don't even know where I'm going with this. Like, I've clearly not planned out this sentence, but like, but conversations about how your attitude can change in the face of death. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think based on what I've read, this book does not wind up being an essay on homophobia, like a positive one. Like, it is definitely a critique. So I'm in that camp myself, and I'm looking forward to sort of this period of adjustment for these fathers as they're coming to terms with who their sons really were and who they loved, but they are no longer able to share that acceptance with them. Okay, long story short, geez, I talked about that for like 3 minutes. I'm so sorry because that was super rambly, but it is what it is. That's how I am here. And then the other book that I'm currently reading is Poverty by America, and this is by Matthew Desmond. He is a sociologist, faculty member at Princeton University. He is also the author of Evicted: Poverty and Profit in the American City, which won a Pulitzer. Pulitzer? I've always called it Pulitzer, but I've heard people on booktube say Pulitzer and it's thrown me for a loop. Anyways, this book is one of my book club books. I'm only a little bit into it right now. I'm in the first chapter, but so far so good. I'm really liking his writing style. I'm finding it very accessible. I have read some academic texts, like, published by university presses. This is not, for the record, this is Crown Publishing, which is a subsidy of Penguin Random House. But oftentimes when academic faculty from universities write books, the audience is other academics. So other people with PhDs and master's degrees in that particular field, and the language is challenging enough that it's kind of a slog for the non-academic to get through, and I'm not finding that to be the case here. I'm finding it to be intended for the general reader, someone that wants to learn about why America, one of the richest countries in the world and one of the most developed nations in the world, has some of the largest per capita impoverished citizens. So I'm looking forward to this. I mean, this author is highly lauded, and yeah, so far so good. The last book that I am reading, and oh shoot, I'm just realizing I don't have the author's name, so I'll have to put that up on the screen, but it's an audiobook that I'm listening to, and it's the book you wish your parents had read, so I'll put that here. And this is, I started this earlier this summer, but I'm just now getting around to it because my Libby checkout, what are we calling it? My loan on it had ended. The loan term had ended and it had to be returned. So now I had to wait for it to come back, and now it's back. So I'm catching up on that one and listening back, like maybe one chapter just to refresh my memory. But this is a book about parenting in the new age and learning to parent in a not reactive way. So, appreciating your child for who they are, not resenting them based on who you were as a child. The argument that the author is trying to make is that often our parenting decisions, and particularly the very emotional ones, are based on how our inner child feels. So the things that we experienced, whether they are traumatic or just problematic in our own childhoods, are then passed down generationally to our kids. And how can we kind of stop that trend? And for the record, had a great childhood, but still the lessons there I think are noteworthy. And as a new parent, I'm just kind of listening to a lot of different opinions to sort of gauge where where I'll land in terms of parenting style, and just trying to start early with making sure that I create a safe space for my kid to grow up in. Anyways, I digress. So that's the book you wish your parents had read. And I'm thinking in terms of up next, it's going to take me a little while to read these, I think, just because, again, I'm still getting into the swing of work and, childcare and all that stuff. But I'm trying to read a little bit every night, ideally minimum 10 pages if I can, at least a half hour, but it's just dependent on, what time I can finally sit down and do that. And so it's slow going. My goals, my reading goals for the year, I've sort of put them on a back burner because I know that it's not the end of the world if I don't read another 20 books this year. I'll live. And so will you if I don't read the books that I set out to read in my previous videos. But refer back to my last video, which was if I don't read these by the end of the year books, to see what's sort of next on the docket for me. I'm going to pick from that list for sure. So that's it for me for today. The next episode, or the next video, I don't know, what am I, screenwriter? The next video that I'll be posting is how I'm tracking my reading, just so that you can learn a little bit more about me, my reading goals, and how I keep up with all of the books that I've read, and be able to refer back to them in the future. So that'll be up next week at the latest. Thank you again for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!